Temple Mount, ground zero. We have two parallel passages of what Jerusalem will be like in the theocratic kingdom to come, when one day all nations will flow into it to worship the King. The Jewish prophets Isaiah and Micah speak of the same time period when one day Jerusalem will be Earth's capital and the Temple Mount ground zero for Messiah's headquarters. The passage in Isaiah is repeated in Micah concerning Jerusalem of the future and the Temple Mount on Mount Moriah in the millennial kingdom age to come. All the nations of the world will make aliyah, a Hebrew term meaning to ascend, to go up to Jerusalem as they did in biblical times during the Passover in the spring, Pentecost in the summer, and tabernacles in the fall according to Deuteronomy 16:16. This time, all nations will go up to Jerusalem to worship the King from his holy mountain. That is clearly the Temple Mount, where in the future the millennial temple will stand. The nations in the kingdom will learn the ways of God after nearly 6,000 years of human rebellion, beginning in Genesis 3 and ending in Revelation 19 with Jesus' second coming. Jesus will establish a theocracy and will rule under a divine government over the nations of the world seated on David's throne in the millennial temple. The destructive weapons of mass destruction created by man will be turned into tools of peace and economic productivity. Nation will not invade nation nor learn war anymore. Based on Deuteronomy 32:8 and Ezekiel 5:5, God placed the sons of Adam, a reference in this case to the Jewish people, and set them in the midst of the nations that surround them. The mountain of the Lord is the holy mountain of God in Jerusalem, a clear reference to the Temple Mount, Har Harbayit in Hebrew. The phrase God's holy mountain appears 18 times in the Old Testament. The ancient Jewish prophet Daniel defined the location of God's holy mountain when, in prayer, he begged the Lord to turn his wrath away from the city of Jerusalem, thy holy mountain, in Daniel 9:16. Daniel also presented his supplications to the Lord for the holy mountain of my God in Daniel 9:20. Other scriptures advance our understanding of the term holy mountain of God. It actually refers to the Temple Mount in the city of Jerusalem, as we read in Daniel chapter 11 and verse number 45. The holy city, Jerusalem, is mentioned 767 times in the King James Bible anyway. Jerusalem, 626 times mentioned in the Old Testament and 141 times in the New Testament. Never is Jerusalem mentioned in the Quran. God has chosen Jerusalem, and in particular the Temple Mount, as the spot where he will dwell among his people forever, according to 2 Chronicles chapter 6 and verse number 6. The Temple Mount, as it is known today, is Mount Moriah, where God told Abraham to take his son Isaac and offer him there as a sacrifice in Genesis 22. It is also the location of the threshing floor that King David purchased from the Jebusite Ornan, also called Aruna, in 2 Samuel chapter 24, verses 18 through 25. Israel's third king, Solomon, built the first Jewish temple on the same Mount Moriah, the Temple Mount in 2 Chronicles 3:1. God chose the Temple Mount for the house where his son, Jesus Christ, will dwell forever among his people, the Jewish people. The millennial temple will be built by Jesus himself, according to Zechariah 6:12 and 13. We read in Revelation chapter 11, verses 1 and 2, that Jerusalem will be under Gentile control during the 70th week of Daniel's prophecy, with a tribulation temple on the Temple Mount. Jesus calls this the time of the Gentiles in Luke 21:24. Jesus returns at the end of the tribulation period to put an end to the times of the Gentiles. He will crush all Gentile world powers, and he will establish his kingdom from Jerusalem. In Genesis chapters 1 and 2, there was a theocracy. In Genesis 3, after the fall of man, it transitioned to a satanocracy. And in Revelation 19, a theocracy will be restored in the millennial kingdom. We then read in Micah chapter 4, verses 1 through 4. But in the last days it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established in the top of the mountains, and it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow unto it. And many nations shall come and say, Come and let us go up, Aliyah, to ascend to the mountain of the Lord, and to the house of the God of Jacob. And he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among many people, and rebuke strong nations afar off. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into prudent hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. But they shall sit, every man under his vine and under his fig tree, and none shall make them afraid, for the mouth of the Lord of hosts hath spoken it. Parallel to Micah chapter 4 is Isaiah chapter 2, verses 1 through 4, concerning the conditions of the millennial kingdom, where the promises made to Abraham and David and to the nation of Israel will be fulfilled. It says, the word that Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up, again, Aliyah, to ascend to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. And he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into prudent hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Why? The Mashiach, the Messiah, is reigning from Jerusalem. Yeshua HaMashiach. Before this all transpires, the next main event is the rapture of the church that is on God's calendar of activity. That could happen at any moment without signs or dates preceding it.